Happy SummerSlam week, folks, and welcome to episode 403 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, August 18, 2021. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week. I am recording this a bit earlier than usual, which is why my voice is complete garbage, so I apologize in advance for that. But there is a reason for that. Not the voice thing, that's because I'm recording it earlier, but I'm recording it earlier for a reason. So more on that a little bit later on. I'll be talking more about it on my Twitter and social media later on today, tomorrow, whatever. So big news on that front. Stay tuned. If you guys want to send in a question to the show, you can do so, though, by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below by leaving a comment on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get started here first with No L from Facebook. Their question was, top 5, and this is a great question, top 5 SummerSlam opening matches, with SummerSlam being on Saturday. That's a very good question. So, after looking a bit more into it and remembering off the top of my head what my favorite SummerSlam openers were, there's over 30 years of SummerSlam. I couldn't remember them all off the top of my head, especially the openers, like John Ritlin, whose question I'll get to later. Great question about what matches went on last that shouldn't have gone on last at SummerSlam. And I actually found a lot fewer examples than I thought I would. Probably a lot fewer than, arguably WrestleMania. But with SummerSlam, I don't really remember all the openers, so I kind of had to go back and remember a few. I've seen every SummerSlam. I've seen every opener in SummerSlam history. In no particular order, these were the 5 that I came across that I remembered were great and that I would put in the top 5, conversation for best openers in SummerSlam history. Again, in no particular order. 1, Chris Jericho versus Dolph Ziggler from 2012, which you're probably thinking, I don't even remember that match. But I thought it was a great match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought they worked wonderfully together. That was like their first major one-on-one match in WWE, and that was right around the time that Jericho turned face for the first time in a long time. I love that match. And I think Ziggler lost, but he went on to beat Jericho like either the next night on Raw or a week later to get Jericho fired from WWE. It was like a loser leaves WWE match or whatever, and Jericho lost. But they had a great opener at SummerSlam 2012, and Jericho needed the win too. I mean, he was coming off a lot of losses to CM Punk, among other people, so he really needed that win. Another great opener from 1997, Mankind versus Triple H, or at that point he would have been Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I really enjoyed that feud. I thought they had 3 consistently very good matches on pay-per-view in the summer of 97. First, the King of the Ring, when Hunter beat Mankind to become the 1997 King of the Ring. They had a rematch at the Canadian Stampede In Your House show the following month, which was great, which I think ended in a double countout, if I remember correctly. And then they had a match to open SummerSlam in 97, which was a great match. And obviously, Triple H and Mick Foley have always worked well together, whether it was 97, 99, I was going to say 01, but it was 2000 that they worked together inside Hell in the Cell. This was no exception. This was back when he was still Mankind, and Triple H had just debuted Chyna, I think. I'm pretty sure she was at ringside for this match, but I thought the crowd was great for this match. It was really, really good. I'm not a big fan of like those late 90s pay-per-views, like the Attitude Era pay-per-views. They were kind of not the greatest in my opinion, at least not for what I liked out of WWE or what I like out of wrestling and stuff like that. But Mankind and Hunter had a great match at SummerSlam 97 in the opener. Another Dolph Ziggler match, Dolph Ziggler versus Rey Mysterio from 2009 for the Intercontinental Championship. Dolph has been in a lot of SummerSlam openers, and all of which have been great. There might be 5, but in addition to the 2 I already mentioned, Jericho and Ziggler from 2012, and then him and Mysterio from 2009, an honorable mention I would put on this list is him and Seth Rollins from SummerSlam 2018 for the Intercontinental Championship. Now, I don't think it was the best match those two had together, which is why I didn't put it on here. Rollins winning was great, but they had a really good match on that show. And then he also opened Survivor Series, SummerSlam, actually 2010 with Kofi Kingston, I'm pretty sure, for the Intercontinental Championship. That ended in a no contest, I believe, due to interference from the Nexus. But he opened SummerSlam 2010, and then I think he also opened SummerSlam 2014 in a very good match as well with The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. So you can always count on Dolph Ziggler to open up SummerSlam strong. I will say that. Two more matches here. Brain Busters versus the Hart Foundation from SummerSlam in 1989. The second ever installment of SummerSlam, I believe. Great tag team action there. Obviously, if it features the Hart Foundation, no surprise. But the Brain Busters were amazing as well. So, great match in 1989 to open that show. And then finally, I said I wasn't ranking these, but I would undoubtedly put this at number one. In my opinion, the greatest SummerSlam opener of all time. To me, without question, is Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio from SummerSlam 02. SummerSlam 02 is still one of the greatest overall pay-per-views of all time. Just a fucking amazing show. Great match here. The entire show was amazing. I mean, Brock and Rock in the main event was great. Triple H and Shawn in the no-holds-barred unsanctioned match was great. I'm pretty sure you had Edge and Kurt Angle. I think it was Edge and Eddie. Pretty sure were feuding at that point. Edge and Kurt had already feuded earlier on in the spring. And that was when Kurt had his head shaved. Benoit and RVD, maybe, for the Intercontinental Championship. The entire card wasn't amazing. It was like Taker and Test at one point. It's like, who gives a fuck? But overall, that show was amazing. Including for Angle and Mysterio opening it up. Now moving over to the Twitter questions first. At noob_n_co 1991. Their first question was, what were your thoughts in the first episode of AEW Rampage? I say it's a good 1 hour show to wrap up a week of wrestling. I agree. The only thing with Rampage that I didn't like, or I won't probably like moving forward, I thought the debut episode was good. I just don't think having a 10 p.m. Eastern time slot on a Friday night is sustainable. They got around 700,000 viewers, which is good, but that's the debut episode. They'll probably do a decent number on Friday with all the, Punk promotion, not promotion, but like the rumors and the advertisements and whatever. People will tune in for Punk on Friday. I don't know how big the rating's actually going to be when you're not actually advertising CM Punk. Maybe he'll show up this week and they'll advertise him for next week or whatever. But either way, I don't think those ratings will stick. I think it'll drop down to like around at least 500,000 people, which is what they were doing on Friday nights for that month they were on Fridays and Saturdays during the month that they were being preempted by the NBA back in June. Which those aren't terrible numbers. It's around the same numbers that NXT does every week, live on a Tuesday on USA Network. Still not ideal, though. That being said, a 1 hour show compared to a 2 hour show is great. I enjoyed those first few Friday Night Dynamites a few months ago, but the 2 hour shows ending at midnight, it was just a lot, especially coming off a 2 hour SmackDown. So I think a 1 hour Rampage show is great. They might have to expand it at some point, the bigger their roster gets. But for now, I think a 1 hour show is perfect. The 4-man commentary team wasn't ideal. Take Jericho the fuck out of there. I think Mark Henry and Excalibur are a perfectly fine duo for that show. If they want to throw Taz in there, that's cool. Chris Jericho is completely pointless. His screaming and shit was just, oh my god. And I love Chris Jericho, but the commentary was abysmal. Overall, I thought the show was good, though. I thought the hour flew by. Not every show is going to have 3 stacked championship matches. They'll probably start to feature lower level talent at some point, as long as it doesn't become the main event of AEW, and not like main event, but like the show main event, or the WWE superstars of AEW. Then I think we're good here. Hopefully they can continue to treat it with importance, showcase new faces, and also bring in the star power as well, have meaningful matches, and have great meaningful matches is what I'm hoping for. So fingers crossed, but I like the first episode of Rampage. If you want more in-depth thoughts on the show, RJ and I actually went live on Saturday morning breaking it down here on the channel. Will we do the same going forward? I don't know. It really depends on what we can fix up and whatever in terms of schedules and whatever, but it would be cool to do that, whether it be just me or me and RJ talking about both SmackDown and Rampage. Rampage specifically this week I'll probably do a review of, because WrestleRant Radio we do like the day before, so maybe we will hook up on Saturday real quickly before SummerSlam and do a review, we'll see. But we'll see. We'll see how much of importance they treat this show with moving forward. But I think it is a good way to wrap up the week of wrestling, like you said. I do agree on that. His second question: if you can bring back any WWE superstar who got released, who would you bring back? To me, I say bring back Kairi Sane, because fans missed her the most, and that should have been from last week. That should have been my what if question from last week about, like, what if they brought back Kairi Sane is what he's asking. Kairi Sane wasn't released, to my knowledge. She's not there anymore, but that's because she went back to Japan. And to my knowledge, she's still under a WWE contract. So I'm not even really sure if that question makes any sense. She's back in Japan now. She's still a WWE ambassador, which is why she couldn't work that. Not Shimmer. What was that promotion? A promotion over in Japan. Stardom, the Stardom show. I think it was like their 10-year anniversary or something. She couldn't work the show. I think Io Shirai sent them like a video or something. But as far as working the show, Kairi Sane couldn't be there, even though she's in Japan, which is weird. WWE's weird about stuff like that, even though she's not working for WWE in the States anymore. Just bizarre. But, yeah, I don't really consider her released. Would I bring her back? Yeah, but to do what, though? Is she going back to losing to Nia Jax? I mean, Kairi Sane, they never really gave a fuck about on the main roster. We don't really talk about botched call-ups enough when it concerns Kairi Sane. Like, she didn't have a bad main roster run. She and Asuka were tag team champions for a while. She had some success. She was in a pay-per-view main event at TLC 2019. You know, she had some pretty prominent matches here and there against Becky Lynch, among other people. So, I don't know. I wouldn't call her a complete bust on the main roster, but she should have been far bigger considering how good she is, or was, or whatever, especially in NXT. For me, who would I bring back? And they fired a lot of people. The thing is, the people that it would have brought back are already in other promotions, and I wouldn't bring back almost any of these people anyway. Not that it would have fired them, but it's like, what kind of message does it send to fire these people, fuck with their heads, and then immediately bring them back? The Joe situation's a little different because he got rehired to NXT. It's not like he got fired from the main roster and then they brought him back, which would still be something, because Joe, I don't know, I just feel like Joe might be a better fit in WWE. NXT is a great place for him right now. I mean, not to say he wouldn't thrive in AEW, but I didn't have a problem with that. If they were to bring back, Braun Strowman, do I want to see him back? Not really, honestly. If he comes back, will I mark the hell out? Not really. Could I see him coming back? Definitely. Aleister Black, had they not fucked him over, it's like, oh, let's fire you and then bring you right back. No. I mean, that's ridiculous. Same thing with Bray Wyatt. Would I want to see Bray Wyatt back? Definitely. But the thing with that is, why would you go back to the company that fired you unceremoniously? You know what I mean? Like, just a sack of trash. Oh, we're going to let you go. Like, who gives a shit about you? And then they're going to bring you right back a couple of weeks later. I wouldn't do that. I'd rather see him go to AEW or do movies or do anything else but go back to WWE right now. The only people recently that really stand out as two people I'd be like, okay, they made a fucking mistake, rehire them like immediately, would be Bronson Reed and Mercedes Martinez. Bronson Reed and Mercedes can both kill it wherever they go. But there are two people, it's not like with Wyatt and with even Aleister and other people like that on the main roster, where they got it wrong with them. They blame the talent for not getting over, and then they let go of them. With Reed and Martinez, they never even fucking tried. Mercedes was on the main roster for all of a month as part of Retribution. Beyond that, though, she never really had a fair shot on the main roster in that women's division. Not everyone's getting called up, but both Reed and Martinez could have been great assets and were great assets in both NXT, and could have been great assets on the main roster in their respective divisions. Reed, they never even fucking tried. But then again, why would he want to go back? I mean, aside from, wanting to support his visa issues, why would he go back right now when it's like, all right, this company fired me thinking I was expendable? That's not exactly a great sign for my future if they bring me back right now, if I go back right now. You know what I mean? They just don't want you to go to the competition at that point, and that's why they're signing you like immediately. Why fire you in the first place only to rehire you soon after? I mean, things change, like Drake Maverick, they rehired almost immediately back after, but still, I'd probably bring back Reed and Martinez, but of all the people they've let go over the last year and a half, I think a lot of those people should be like, hey, fuck this place. I'm just going to go show them what they're missing out on and become a star somewhere else. Their third question, who is next to face Dr. Brit Baker for the AEW Women's title at All Out? It better be a huge surprise, maybe Ruby Soho, because she's headed to Chicago in that train station in that vignette. Is she headed to Chicago, though? Or you said might be headed to Chicago. If you look at the train ticket, as people have pointed out, and they very so clearly focus on the fucking train ticket, so it's no surprise. This is not meant to be an Easter egg. I mean, it's very obvious where this is going, I think, or what they want you to think anyway. Is that it says it's a one-way ticket, I think, from Orlando to New York, to Penn Station or whatever. So I don't think they'd be doing that unless they were teasing the Arthur Ashe Stadium debut in AEW. I think she is headed to AEW. I think she should go to AEW. She could show up in another promotion like an Impact and do well. Maybe she could do all of them, I don't know, like a Chelsea Green type thing. But as far as she goes, I think she would be perfect in AEW in that women's division. And I mean, personally, selfishly, I want to see her debut at All Out because I'll be there, and I just think it'd get a great reaction. But they could also save her for that New York show, too. So it doesn't really matter, but I don't think it's going to be Ruby versus Baker at All Out. I mean, if you watch the shows, you could probably pick out that it's very likely going to be Britt Baker versus Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander has been undefeated since coming back earlier this year. She confronted Britt Baker following her title defense on Friday's Rampage show. They're very clearly headed to Baker versus Statlander, as they probably should be. I mean, Statlander's been killing it since she's come back. She's improved. She's on a roll. She's undefeated. I don't think she should win the championship. I would still save that spot for Thunder Rosa. But I do think Baker and Statlander is a very good, logical addition to that all-out card. There's a lot of matches that we don't currently know about for the all-out show. Like the tag titles are being defended tonight. Omega and Christian's probably happening, but what are we doing with the TNT title? What are we doing with all these other people on the show that don't currently have feuds, like a Moxley? Paige isn't on the show. I mean, I find that very hard to believe. Lance Archer as well, now that he's no longer the IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion. It's a weird situation, so that being said, of all the matches that are kind of in a place of uncertainty right now, I do think Baker and Statlander is essentially a lock for that pay-per-view. I don't think it's going to be a surprise opponent like with Deonna Purrazzo from Slammiversary. Baker and Deonna Purrazzo would be really cool. A lot like we kind of got Shida last year at All Out facing the NWA Women's Champion Thunder Rosa at that time. That was an awesome surprise. But they actually have women in their division that can go for the belt right now. Ty Conti being another one, but I think Statlander just has more momentum and has been making more appearances on Rampage and Dynamite recently compared to Ty Conti. At Reborn again from the Twitter machine, John Ritland, we actually spoke for an hour, not an hour. I mean, we spoke for more than an hour on the phone, but he was on the show for a little while last week, WrestleRant Radio. Check it out, cheap plug. Talking all about the latest round of NXT releases, what they mean, where they might go, which one was a bigger misfire and stuff like that. So great time with John as always. You can catch that on WrestleRantRadio.com, WrestleRant.com, so on and so forth. But he's also on YouTube, A Real Honesty with John Ritland on the YouTube machine as well. So check out his stuff and subscribe, and he does great content. John's a great guy. His question was, or first question, what are your thoughts on Rampage's hour-long format? I feel it was refreshing as it wasn't the greatest show, but still left the viewer wanting more. Like I said, I completely agree. I think the hour-long format, I don't know who I was telling this to. Maybe it was RJ. I don't know if it was Alexis, but it's so refreshing to have like a major wrestling show that's only an hour. Like NWA Power is an hour, but as John will tell you, the show's kind of shit right now on Fight TV, and you're paying for it, too. Ring of Honor, which I watch every week, is also an hour. It's like around 50 minutes every week with commercials on their website. That's a very good show, and that's an hour. That's always been an hour. But all the other major shows I watch, like Impact, all the WWE shows, including NXT now. NXT UK is like an hour, but still, like the major shows are 2 hours. Impact's 2 hours. The AEW shows are 2 hours. Dynamite's 2 hours. Fucking Dark is 2 hours. So to have Rampage be an hour is very refreshing, I agree. It's not going to be the most electric hour of wrestling every single week. Like you said, I didn't think it was the greatest show I've ever seen, but I thought it was a strong debut. It was exactly what it needed to be. The matches were good. No notable title changes, but we had Christian Cage beating Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship at the very start of the show in the first match in Rampage history. So yeah, I enjoyed the show. It was memorable. How stacked are these shows going to be going forward is the question. How much star power will they really have on these shows is the question. But if they can keep that up, I think Rampage will be just fine. His second question here. Looking back at the various SummerSlam main events, what are some that you feel shouldn't have closed the show? And what match on that particular card would you have had close the show instead? Great question. So looking back, like I said, the 30 years of SummerSlam, I honestly could only come up with 2 examples. That sounds weird, and you might disagree, John, or other people might disagree. Going through all the main events, even if they weren't the best match on the show, it made sense for that match to be the main event, in my opinion. For almost every installment of SummerSlam except for 2. And even one of these, you can make the case, oh yeah, that made sense as the main event. The match was just fucking awful. So the 2 that I actually came up with were these. 1, I mean, this is, I think, the most prominent example. If you don't say this, then what are we even doing here? 1994, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. Steel Cage WWE Championship. How the fuck did that not main event the show over Undertaker versus Underfaker? The suspense of, oh, Undertaker's coming back. Who gives a shit? The match was terrible. The whole thing was just fucking dumb. The match was just awful. So, yeah, that is the biggest, most egregious decision in SummerSlam history as far as match order. The fact that that was bumped out of the main event, Bret and Owen, who never main evented a pay-per-view, by the way, I don't think, because they opened WrestleMania 10. They didn't headline WrestleMania 10. They should have headlined this pay-per-view, but they fucking didn't. The match was amazing. So, that did not go on last. Undertaker versus Underfaker did. So that is the most prominent example. The only other example after looking through every installment of SummerSlam, and this is where, this is the one where I would say, okay, it kind of made sense for this match to go on last, but it was just awful. Diesel versus Mabel from the very next year at SummerSlam 95 for the WWE Championship. I understand wanting to put your WWE title match last. But then again, though, to be perfectly honest with you, 3 years earlier, in 92, they had the Intercontinental Championship match between Bret Hart and the British Bulldog go on last over Savage and Warrior. And that was a great match, too. I thought a very good match. Not as good as their SummerSlam match, but still very good. So, they very easily could have closed the show with another Intercontinental Championship match, that being Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, ladder match part 2 at SummerSlam 95. That really should have been the main event. The big story behind it and just everything else going into that match. I remember watching that when I first got into wrestling 13 years ago as a free match on Xfinity and just really enjoying it. So that really should have been the main event. Diesel and Mabel was fucking awful. I know Mabel was King Mabel at that point. He was going for the gold. He didn't win. It was not a good ending. The ending just was awful. So those are the only 2 installments I would say, yeah, those matches really should have gone on last. Other than that, I think everything else makes sense. And they've had a lot of non-world title matches in the main event of SummerSlam over the years. I mean, 2016, 2005, there were a bunch of them from what I can remember. 2012, you can go back through the history of SummerSlam, but they've had a lot of attraction matches, 94 being one of them, obviously, unfortunately. 98 or 99, maybe both, actually. What else? Not 03, I don't think. No, not 03, not 04. 05 was, I already mentioned that one. Not 06 or 07 or 08. No, 08, it was Edge and Taker. That was not a world title match. And that was an amazing main event inside Hell in the Cell. 09 was a title match. 2010 was not. That was Team WWE versus Team Nexus, which had the worst ending in SummerSlam history as far as booking is concerned. Fucking dumb. But it made sense to be the main event. 2011 was a world title match. 2012 I already mentioned. 2013 was. 2014 was. 2015 was not. Brock Lesnar and Taker was not. And that was a very good match. 2016 was not. Already mentioned that. 2017 was. 18 was, 19 was, and last year was as well. So you definitely could have put some of those undercard matches on the main event. And when I say undercard, I mean wasn't the main event. Like Bret Hart, Owen Hart, and then Diesel, or rather Shawn Michaels and Razor, very easily and probably arguably should have main evented those respective SummerSlam shows. John's third question here. Assuming CM Punk shows up on Rampage this Friday, what match at All Out is likely to happen? Punk versus Darby, or Punk takes out Christian before the pay-per-view and faces Omega? That's such WWE booking. Not even that I'm not looking forward to Punk and Omega eventually. And I like that idea, but I feel like we're so conditioned to think that way because of WWE. And sometimes you could do that stuff in wrestling where someone gets attacked and someone takes their place. For a world title match, especially with a win-loss record, you can't have Punk just come in on night 1 and contend for the championship, even if he loses. I think that'd be astronomically dumb. They really should have had Hangman, but I think he's off on paternity leave or something, so that's just not going to happen. But yeah, I don't think Punk and Omega's happening at All Out, but I think Punk and Darby just makes way more sense. With what Darby's been saying, with the whole best in the world thing, they promoted that again while advertising Friday's Rampage. Punk's Instagram post about nothing's over till you're underground, which is exactly what Darby Allin's tattoo says, so It just makes way too much sense to not do. And those could all be red herrings, obviously, but I just think of everyone on the AEW roster, he is a Darby fan. He has said that before. He's gone on the record and saying that. He also said he was a Will Hobbs fan, so we might be seeing Punk versus Will Hobbs or Powerhouse Hobbs at some point. But yeah, I just think it makes more sense for them to do Punk and Darby. Darby can look good in defeat. He can, endure the loss and be perfectly fine. I think he'd be a great first opponent back for CM Punk. So I think Punk and Darby is essentially a lock, and I really do think Punk's wrestling on that show. He's absolutely debuting on Friday. Otherwise, they're burning Chicago to the ground again if CM Punk does not show up on Friday. But, what is he showing up on Friday to do? Just to show up and then we're promised this first promo at All Out? I mean, maybe. We could hear from him for the first time at All Out, but we're in Chicago, and you're not in Chicago all the time. I would have him wrestle on that show. Assuming he's been training recently and he's been in the ring and doing stuff like that, have his first match on that show and have it be with Darby Allin. That's my guess, and that's what I want to see. At Ewagoon91, did you know that Index share the first real name of Sam? I did and I didn't know that. I knew Indy Hartwell's real name was Samantha. I've mentioned this before, but as far as Twitter goes, I've known her for a very long time. We've actually mutually followed each other for almost 10 years, probably over 10 years at this point. I've known her since she was a super, super fan of WWE, well before she ever pursued professional wrestling. And her name on Twitter was, I forgot what her actual username was, but her name was Samantha, and I remember that. So I completely forgot about that. I've known her as Indy on the show for so long now. I mean, that's her, Indy name as well, no pun intended. So I forgot her actual name was Samantha, but I do remember that. And then Dexter Loomis, I don't remember what his actual name is, but I remember his name in TNA was Samuel Shaw, unless that is his real name, which I don't think it is. But I remember his name was Samuel Shaw in TNA, so that does make sense. Never really thought about that. What are your thoughts on the commentary team of Michael Cole and Pat McAfee? I think I've mentioned this before, but I think they're the best commentary team in the entire company, to be perfectly honest. NXT, I like Wade Barrett a lot. Beth Phoenix is fine. Vic Joseph is just... I honestly feel like he's regressed as an announcer. Maybe I've just gotten more used to him, and he's like the typical bland WWE announcer, and the whole, ooh, after every fucking move is so annoying. NXT commentary is not the greatest. I miss Morrow. Raw's actually decent. Jimmy Smith is very good. I don't give a shit about Byron. That was the problem. Corey Graves is good, I think. I just really don't care about Byron. He's so pointless on commentary. And then maybe NXT UK, but definitely SmackDown has the strongest announced team. Michael Cole will still make mistakes every now and again, but Pat McAfee will let him hear about it. That's the thing, and he has all this energy, and he's dancing as Pat McAfee. How long is that going to last before they just completely water him down and beat him into the system? I don't know, but for now, he's very entertaining. He's got a lot of insightful commentary. He's perfect for the role. Definitely Cole and McAfee, and I think you can argue in a lot of ways. Pat McAfee has absolutely revitalized the commentary career of Michael Cole. This is the best Michael Cole has been on commentary consistently in a very long time. It brings out a new side of Michael Cole. The dynamic is different than any other combination that Cole has had over the years, whether it be with JBL or Taz or Lawler or really anyone else. And it's very refreshing, and it makes the SmackDown commentary team, that whole portion of the show, not really much of a worry. Cole still isn't the most amazing commentator of all time, but he is more bearable in that respect alongside Pat McAfee, and I like the fun, lighthearted dynamic there that we really haven't seen with Cole at all, probably since he came into WWE, or at least not since he was calling SmackDown with Taz many years ago. His next question, do you think that Mauro Ranallo, speaking of which, and Daniel Bryan were the best commentary team of 2016? They must have been. They called the Cruiserweight Classic. I thought Mauro, I still think Mauro's an incredible announcer. He's one of my favorites. He called the CWC alongside Daniel Bryan. And if you watch the tournament, which was probably one of the greatest tournaments this company's ever fucking done, was the CWC 5 years ago. Crazy to think it's been that long. But Daniel Bryan, that was his first, real commentary gig. He's done commentary before here and there, but not as a full-time gig. And he took to it like a duck to water. You could tell that he cared about the combatants and the matches and the stories and the wrestling and everything else. He was really fucking into it. He was really passionate and emotional and insightful and knowledgeable. Bryan was great, and having Mauro as a broadcast partner was even better. So, yeah, definitely they were the best commentary team of 2016. It's not even close. Their last question here, did you know that had he not gotten released, there were plans for Leon Ruff to join, ironically enough, Hit Row? I did not know that. I'm not sure where you read that. Maybe he said that in an interview or Fightful reported that and I missed it. I did not know that. I don't know how I feel about that, though. I know he has history with Isaiah from a few months ago. I know it was actually during their Falls Count Anywhere match that Hit Row debuted as a faction. I like Leon Ruff, but I just feel like he's perfect in that Mikey Whipwreck underdog role. I wasn't always fond of whenever he won, like when he beat Timothy Thatcher for literally no fucking reason. Last year, earlier this year, or whatever it was. I thought that was really stupid. But I always thought he sold well for people, and Hit Row has enough people. I don't think they need a fifth member, at least not Leon Ruff. B-Thab is very good in her role. Ashanti the Adonis is kind of like the take a bullet guy, like he's the bump guy. He'll bump for you, and he'll take all the offense if you're in a tag team match or whatever. He kind of fills that role already, and then him and Tav Dalla are a very good tag team. AJ Francis is coming along nicely. He fills that bodyguard role well. And Isaiah's awesome, so I don't really think they needed Leon Ruff. I don't know if that was an actual plan. I hadn't read that. You're probably right if you're reading that somewhere, I guess. But I don't know. I think it's honestly better that it didn't work out. I mean, I'd rather have Leon Ruff in the company in some capacity. I'm not going to be crying that he's gone, but I wouldn't have fired the guy. I think there were other ways to utilize him in an enhancement type role. But I don't think he would have done. He could have done well in Hit Row. I just don't think they really need him, to be honest. At Justin David Kish. I always read your name, Justin, and Justin's been a long-time listener of the show, and he sent in questions many, many years ago. Justin, thank you for sending in questions. I appreciate it, my man. But I always read your name, your full name, and think Kid Cash. Probably because I play fucking SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 all the time. And Kid Cash is on that roster. That's probably why I think about that. But anyway, Justin's first question was, how big of an impact do you think Davey Richards will have as a member of Major League Wrestling? So, yeah, Davey Richards, after a few years away from wrestling, I think he left in 2017. If I'm not mistaken, he kind of retired to do school stuff and pursue, medical stuff or being a nurse or a doctor. I don't know, doing something like that. And he recently came back to MLW, which is cool. Him and Eddie Edwards actually reunited, I think, on an independent show, or they have already, or are going to soon, which is cool. But yeah, I think he's a great fit for that MLW roster. I don't watch MLW at all. I don't think I've ever seen a full MLW show, or even a match for that matter. But knowing the vibe of what they've, the roster they have and their vibe to a certain extent from what I've seen here and there, very little of the promotion, he fits that promotion very well. Unless he's back in Impact to reunite with Eddie, which would be awesome, then I don't really think there's a reason to bring him back to Impact. I think his days as a world championship guy are over, although he is still very good. Probably, I haven't seen many of his matches. I'm just guessing. I'm assuming he's still good because I haven't heard any bad things about his return so far, if he's even wrestled. I don't think he has yet, but nonetheless, I think he's a great fit for MLW. Hopefully he has success, and hopefully it's not long before we get to see on a major stage an American Wolves reunion, whether it be in Impact or elsewhere. And Justin's second question, the last question of the episode for this week, can you see any recently released WWE superstars making a fine addition to MLW or Ring of Honor? I've said this, not everyone who leaves WWE or gets fired or whatever has to go to AEW. There's so many other promotions, and I know AEW is the biggest stage, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I love Bronson Reed. I don't think Bronson Reed is a slam dunk for AEW. Him popping up there would be cool. I think Tony Khan would be dumb to at least not pursue it. And Bronson Reed, hey, if the biggest money guy comes knocking, I'm picking up the phone and I'm probably signing that contract. But in my opinion, I think Bronson Reed could really benefit from doing some of the bigger, lower level promotions, if that makes sense. So not AEW, but a step below those promotions and the bigger promotions, like an Impact or a Ring of Honor. I think Bronson in a Ring of Honor New Japan situation, specifically New Japan, but Ring of Honor too, I think that'd be fucking awesome. I think him in either of those promotions would be great. Bobby Fish going back to Ring of Honor is absolutely a lock, I think. If they don't rehire him back to NXT in a trainer role or something, I could absolutely see him going back to Ring of Honor in the very near future. They have 30-day non-compete clauses, I understand. Ring of Honor has a Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view, I think, in mid-September. So if they really wanted Bobby Fish for that show, he could appear, and I honestly expect him to at this point. If Mike Kanellis went back or Mike Bennett went back to Ring of Honor, I think Bobby Fish will as well. And he was always a great fit there before he went to NXT, and he also did very well there too, obviously. But Yeah, I think Bobby Fish in Ring of Honor makes a lot of sense, as well as Bronson Reed. Beyond that, like, I've seen people say, oh, what about this idea for Tony Nese? In AEW, I just really think a guy like him would get lost in the shuffle. He'd be on Dark every week. I don't really need to see Tony Nese in TNT title contention. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the guy's very good, but I don't really need to see him in either of those promotions. He's done the Impact thing. So if he were to go to like Ring of Honor or MLW, I think he would thrive. I honestly think Tony Nese in like an MLW would be fucking perfect. I do. And he was with WWE for so long. I don't think MLW was even around when he first left for WWE 5 years ago. So, yeah, Tony Nese in MLW or Ring of Honor would be really cool. I'd have to look at the list. They've released a lot of people, obviously. A lot of people either, got let go or got released or left on their own. But those are a few of the names that I could see popping up in MLW or Ring of Honor in the near future. I think either one of those guys, either one of those promotions would be a great landing place for a lot of the people I just mentioned. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 403 of #AskGSM here today for August 18th, 2021. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. If you want to send in questions to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a question in the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last, but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. And with all that being said, guys, be sure to like this video as well. I would appreciate it. Drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We got another interview coming up this week. Probably Friday. I'm looking at it right now. Just a busy next couple days. Like I said, I'm recording this early on Wednesday for a reason, which is why my voice is not the greatest. But yeah, that whole announcement's coming up either today or tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And some of you already know, but big weekend ahead is all I'm going to say. And then, in addition to the Goldberg interview that went up yesterday here on the channel, check that out if you haven't already. Talking all about SummerSlam, Bobby Lashley, Big E, and a lot of other cool stuff. As far as interviews go, that went up on Tuesday here in audio form and in article form over on Bleacher Report. And then what was I going to say? Oh, the next one's probably going to be up on Friday, like I said. So be sure to subscribe, hit that bell button to be notified every time a video like that goes up, or this video, or WrestleRant radio excerpts. I'll be breaking down, hopefully, SmackDown and Rampage this weekend, talking Smack, the WWE 24s as well. A lot to get to. So be sure to stick around for all of it. I look forward to breaking it down all for you guys right here on the channel in the next week. Be sure to subscribe. And more interviews coming in the days to come, and more other, plenty of other exclusive content you're not going to see anywhere else. That's all I'm going to say for right now as far as why you should be paying attention to the channel this coming week more than any other. A lot like with SummerSlam week, a lot like with WrestleMania week, rather. SummerSlam week is shaping up to be very busy, and it already has been, but even more busier, much more busier than I am currently right now in the days to come heading into the pay-per-view on Saturday. But nonetheless, guys, have an awesome one. Enjoy SummerSlam this weekend. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.